The cathedral quarter pretends cypress smoke can quiet winter, so you set the horn lamp on a crate of oil at the mouth of Calle de la Sierpe until a warm coin of light lands where rope, ladle, rumor, and breath must agree, or Sevilla will let a chill from the Guadalquivir write headlines while POX buys the footnotes. Alguaciles strut the arcade, rehearsing authority like a dance they only half remember. A canon from the cabildo uncorks a jar of holy balsam, as if fragrance could be schedule. Two silk factors count bolts that will not be sold this week and discover numbers polish worry but never feed it. Your lane between a lampright's shop, a baker's low oven, and a bath whose water has become a rumor breathes shallow, and you are the warden meant to turn a sentence from the escribano into a street that does not lie. Rope makes the street truthful when mouths want poetry. You square the alley mouth because ankles obey what sermons forget, and you nail counsel at mouth height where wrists must bruise before mouths remember their work. Witness heard, ordinanza read aloud, oath copied, billet listed, fever first, wash before rumor, wash before coin, door unbarred, window latched, straw aired, pallet raised, no crowd at bench, fees displayed, gracias antes que multas. The plank says presente. The clepsydra boy flips his sand like a small alguacil the city trusts. The sisters of steam, bath women who bully water into virtue, drag their copper under your rope and let heat translate talk into tasks. The lamplight hangs two glass shells inside his lintel and promises a softer flame. You promise minutes that do not fail. Because this alley is also the rectangle in your hand, do the practical thing that turns attention into rope. Subscribe and tap the bell. The practical one, not the theatrical one. So part 2 lands while your wrists still remember this grammar. In the comments, write your 7-word winter rule you would actually hammer at mouth height. Fever first, window latched, bread before stories, and tell us what your barrio calls sermons sold as medicine. The sisters will nail the bravest beside the well by sext. Winter is a tireless clerk. It files people into corners and writes the same note on every door. Less wood, less yeast, less patience. Corners are POX's favorite map. You answer with a quieter cartography. Fever first is your stool beneath the shutter, where cheeks confess faster than tongues. Wash before rumor steals breath from the chorus that rehearses under every lantern. Door unbarred receives thirst early, before shame sells it adjectives. Window latched persuades the chill to stay outdoors with dignity. You convert hours into a schedule because schedule is the enemy of panic and the ally of oxygen. The first alarm arrives in a shawl and hope. A mother from the Juderia brings her boy whose rash hid shy all day and rehearsed courage under the lamp. The baker's wife suggests saints. The canon suggests sanctum oil. The alguacil suggests a fine for nothing in particular. Rope teaches the room its verbs. No crowd at bench saves lungs from applause. Palate raised persuades gravity to be polite. Knife scalded makes courage the temperature of work, not performance. Straw aired keeps tomorrow from borrowing today's damp. The boy sleeps soon enough for honesty and late enough for humility. The mother taps the plank, saludo y juramento, and carries a ladle without asking whose job it is. That is the right ending whenever you can afford it. Lantern alleys become inspectors when warehouses sleep. You carry their accent back to the quarter registry and pin it to custom. Wash before coin persuades the night scribe to move his ink behind the ladle. Oath copied ties the ration captain to a clepsydra older than privilege. Billet listed turns strangers into sentences the ledger can defend without blushing. A silk cutter who traded pride for quiet long ago steps forward and washes like a man determined to be correct cheaply. You write his name under gracias antes que multas because Seville learns fastest when gratitude is written where boys can read it. Rumor tries to buy the bath with confidence. A pot seller claims steam itself averts pox. A lamplight says oil does. The canon, kind but verbose, says penitence does. Witness herd seats all three by the basin, 1 minute to rinse, 1 to speak, 1 to carry, until adjectives learn to love buckets. Bread before stories moves 3 lectures into soup. The lamplight discovers generosity is warmer than business. The pot seller discovers usefulness pays in winter. The canon discovers brevity is a sacrament nobody despises. A door, chalked contacto sospechoso, pretends destiny. Laundry persuades it otherwise. Door unbarred invites help without purchasing humiliation. Window latched evicts spectators. Straw aired. Pallet raised. Apologize for furniture. Knife scalded. Linen aired. Swaddles rinsed. Insist the hour become a fact. The child refuses both metaphors, waiting in the doorway, and chooses breath. Gracias antes que multas lists the grandmother first, because loyalty beats eloquence, then the jug runner, then the clepsydra boy, then the clepsydra boy, then the canon who learned sleeves. The chalk dissolves into soap. That is what progress looks like when it declines poetry. Because power forgets where it learned, the escribano arrives with a scroll heavy with relief and late to humility. Closure for respectable streets at first bell, he reads. Exemptions granted by inspector. Lantern alleys to darken at discretion. Ordinanza, read aloud, returns him to last winter's vow. Rinses outrank rhetoric. Gratitude precedes penalties. Sand owns the hour. He hesitates. The plank receives his knuckles. Oath copied glues his promise to the minute. He signs derramado soldado before multa impuesta and looks younger by 10 breaths. Because this city has more balconies than blankets, a trumpet climbs one to sell absolution by stanza. Fees displayed, rents his chorus to San Lazaro's stove. Wash before rumor disperses his audience into errands without humiliating anyone. He revises in place, 2 taps between halves, and learns applause lasts longer when it feeds someone. He leaves damp, employable, and a little embarrassed. That is a good conversion. It survives spring. A procession of pity tries to license the night. The alguacil likes his baton's reflection in oil. The canon wants litanies where buckets should be. The rope demotes spectacle. No crowd at bench protects lungs from admiration. Wash before coin keeps the ration honest when lanterns flatter. Gracias antes que multas is read aloud by the pot seller who became a porter, and he says the names like wages. Adults learn to imitate him. Because markets cannot stop negotiating with weather, the fish stares cough a rumor that believes itself urgent. POX rides salt air faster after curfew. You meet it with basins. Wash before rumor removes its skates. Witness heard gives it chores. The clepsydra boy writes 2 culvert hands under gracias, where pigeons can see them. The rumor leaves poorer. The stairs grow quieter without becoming less brave. Seville is not a monastery. It is a city that wants to survive its memory. You escort grammar into places that spend memory fast. The cabildo's kitchen wants maps. You give it schedules. Bread before stories becomes a rule novices can carry. The registry wants signatures. You pin habits where knuckles must read. The lamplight paints 2 small circles inside his lintel so shy men can rehearse the taps without witnesses. The sisters keep copper busy enough to leave dignity no time to faint. Because this channel is not a balcony, pause once more and volunteer your wrists. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 2 arrives before rumor remembers it, sprints faster in cold. In the comments, post the 7 words you would nail at mouth height: fever first, window latched, bread before stories, and name the next door to rope, the hospital porch, the silk gate, the wharf stairs. We will bring rope, lids, bowls, maps, chalk, a clepsydra that never lies, a plank that refuses flattery, and enough receipts to turn thunder into hinges. The last stretch before sext always tries to spend what the first saved. Tonight, it brings a drum from Triana and 4 sailors with melodies they insist are medicine. Wash before coin puts timing to work, fees displayed, taxes bravura into bricks, and leaves them still singing, but slower, more useful, less proud. The baker's wife fills bowls without rehearsing humility. The canon dries basins with competence he refuses to sermonize. The alguacil practices a smaller authority and finds it fits. The rope stays at mouth height, where knuckles remember. The basin stays low, where fingerprints bless without permission. The hour remains owned by the smallest reliable instrument in the quarter, sand falling exactly as fast as breath can afford. POX, deprived of corners another night, goes looking for alleys without boards. You intend to follow, hammer in pocket, patience in reserve. Say, continue, and we will carry this grammar into the hospital porch when candles audition for medicine, along the silk gate when courtesy becomes ration, across the wharf when rumors sprint, and under the registry arch when clerks attempt to legislate applause. Tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 2 arrives with your hands still ready, and leave your 7 words below so we can nail the bravest at mouth height, where knuckles will meet them before mouths remember how cheap it is to be loud. Tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 2 arrives with your hands still ready, and leave your 7 words below so we can nail the bravest at mouth height, where knuckles will meet them before mouths remember how cheap it is to be loud. The hospital porch pretends candles can cure breath, so you rope the limestone from lintel to bench and set the horn lamp on the almoner's scales until a warm coin of light lands where basin, ration, rumor, and lungs must agree, or Seville will let winter's piety prosecute POX while the wards bargain with air. A sacristan lines up tapers like arguments. An alguacil tests his staff against the column, rehearsing a verdict he hopes to love. The Sisters of Mercy arrive with bread and ledgers. The Sisters of Steam arrive with copper and verbs. You do not lecture. Rope squares the porch. The clepsydra boy flips his sand like a small alguacil the city trusts more than decrees. The first hiss from the kettle translates reverence into soup. The board nailed at mouth height reads the same blunt grammar that saved you yesterday. Witness heard, ordinanza read aloud, oath copied, billet listed, fever first, wash before rumor, wash before coin, door unbarred, window latched, straw aired, pallet raised, no crowd at bench, tasas mostradas, gracias antes que multas. The plank says presente, and even the candles seem content to be supervised. Because this porch is also the rectangle in your palm, do the practical thing that turns attention into rope. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 3 lands while your wrists still remember this grammar. In the comments, leave your 7-word winter rule you would actually hammer at mouth height. Fever first, window latched, bread before stories. And tell us what your barrio calls sermons sold as medicine. The sisters will nail the bravest beside the well bisexed. A pity procession tries to take the stairs by force of choreography. No crowd at bench collapses it into deliveries. The sacristan lowers a reliquary until it becomes a handle. Wash before rumor steals the appetite from speeches that came hungry. Fever first puts cheeks ahead of chronicles. A mother in a monton lists her boy's symptoms like debts she will pay if someone will carry the purse. You answer with minutes, not metaphors. The canon, sleeves rolled because he knows better this week, dries the basin without pretending it is liturgy. The alguacil knocks the plank, saludo y juramento, and fetches wood, surprised that dignity travels better when it works. Across the patio, a ward has learned to count. The sisters read gracias antes que multas aloud, like wages. Names of carriers before fines for mistakes. A kitchen boy hears his name and stands taller than the saint painted over the door. This, the sacristan whispers, is dangerous. Only to vanity, you answer, and the stone keeps breathing. The silk gate thinks courtesy expires with daylight. It does not. You carry grammar down Calle de la Tintoreria to the bolt room where thread and temper share a hinge. Two small circles, saludo y juramento, shine at eye height on the foreman's beam. You show him a second pair at child height. Door unbarred receives thirst early, so shame has nothing to sell. Window latched refuses theater the rent it demands from lungs. Wash before coin changes the order on a table that has never enjoyed being wrong. An apprentice with hands like wintered vines knocks twice, rinses, and looks at you the way a person looks at a rule they wish had arrived sooner. The foreman pretends this was his invention. You let him. Pride that carries is practically true. Back at the hospital porch, a door chalked "Contacto sospechoso" rehearses destiny. Laundry rewrites it. Door unbarred invites help without purchasing humiliation. Window latched evicts spectators who tend to multiply faster than cures. Straw aired, pallet raised, apologize for furniture and forgive gravity. Knife scalded, lienzo aireado, fajas enjuagadas insist the hour be fact before stories devour it. The child arrives uninterested in anyone's adjectives. Gracias antes que multas lists the grandmother first because loyalty outruns eloquence. Then the jug runner who missed a prayer to make a minute. Then the clepsydra boy who kept time. Then the canon whose sleeves learned honesty. Chalk dissolves into soap, which is the only hymn you trust this month. Hungry markets invent absolutions disguised as goods. A pot seller in a respectable hat offers comfort syrup that claims to love lantern light. Tazas Mostradas buys his label into lids and leaves him with a ladle. Wash before rumor moves his customers into the queue that actually shortens lists. He swears, then laughs, then carries, and begs you not to tell anyone he enjoyed usefulness. You promise nothing and write his name under gracias, lower than the baker's wife and higher than the alguacil, which educates everyone who reads. Word walks in from Triana on a drum the river did not consent to. Sailors insist songs will keep POX polite. Wash before coin says sing after ladles. The drum learns to follow the clepsydra. The ration clerk learns to write derramado saldado before arancel cobrado. The friar learns bravery fits between taps, not between stanzas. The sisters clap once and no more. Applause spends badly. Because winter negotiates with furniture against lungs, the rope leads you to a loft where 3 families sleep like grammar, too close but legible if you breathe carefully. Window latched persuades the draft to mind its catechism. Door unbarred receives carriers who are tired of being witnesses. Straw aired refreshes patience. Pallet raised forgives the floor for trying to keep so much alive at once. The father asks if bread is still promise and not metaphor. After rinses, you say. He nods and calls his children to knock the beam. The smallest does it twice and giggles like a bell the city deserves. Because power forgets where it learned, the escribano returns with a parchment eager to be adored. He reads licenses for respectable lanes and waits for gratitude. Ordinanza, read aloud, returns him to last winter's vow, then ties his eloquence to the basin low enough for fingerprints. Oath copied glues his mouth to the minute. He puts his knuckles on the plank because his vanity is brave enough to enjoy being right. Tassas Mostradas prices his indulgences in loaves and lids until he prefers to be ordinary. Call it prudence, you say, and let him keep the word. You keep the hours. The wharf stairs cough a rumor down the tiles. POX rides mist faster than bread after curfew. Rope occupies the seam between water and stone. Wash before rumor removes the rumor's skates. Witness heard sets 2 culvert boys with brushes like arguments. Gracias antes que multas prints their names big enough for pigeons to read. The rumor leaves tired and returns as a schedule. That is what policy sounds like when it isn't ashamed to be practical. Because this channel is not a balcony, pause once more and volunteer your wrists. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 3 arrives before rumor remembers it runs better after lantern light. In the comments, nail your 7 words: fever first, window latched, bread before stories, and name the next threshold for rope: the registry arch, the lampright's shed, the river gate. We will bring rope, lids, bowls, maps, chalk, a clepsydra that never lies, a plank that refuses flattery, and enough receipts to turn thunder into hinges. A cannon, chastened into competence, approaches with a question instead of a homily. Who reads Gracias when spring returns? Everyone who thought they were not necessary, you answer, and make him carry the list to the ward where names are better than miracles. He reads like a book that finally knows its language. The lamplight brings you a woodcut he purchased at the market, a lantern keeper sanctified into the problem she solved. Tassus Mostratus buys the plate into ladles and hires the carver to engrave something more useful, a basin nailed low, a plank with rules, a rope that refuses to clap, a clepsydra that does not lie. He sulks into employment, then smiles when strangers thank him by name. He adds his own 2 taps to the bottom of the print, because pride likes to chase virtue when virtue is having fun. The quarter-glass boy teaches 2 jug runners how to keep time by knuckles when the cup is busy. They carry the trick back to their block, paint 2 circles on a post, and begin exporting grammar like smugglers of sense. The alguacil sees them and pretends to have requested the improvement. You nod. Men behave longer when their reputation gets to arrive on time. The last hour attempts its usual ambush, a trumpet and a pledge to restore joy. Tassus Mostratus prices joy in lids and loaves. Wash before rumor disperses the chorus into errands. Gratias antes que multas names the trumpet lower than the girl who ladled, and higher than the friar who listened. He blushes into usefulness. That is the conversion rate winter honors. You end the porch with the liturgy that never overspends. Cestos abajo, cuerda desatada, banco devuelto, tabla en alto, baskets down, rope unknotted, bench set back, board left up. The clepsydra empties like a promise kept. The sisters push copper toward the threshold that still confuses applause for policy. The candles learn to love being quiet. The rope stays at mouth height where knuckles can remember before mouths rehearse. POX, deprived of corners another night, goes looking for alleys without boards. You intend to follow, hammer in pocket, patience in reserve. Say, continue, and we will walk this grammar under the registry arch when clerks attempt to legislate applause, along the silk gate when courtesy becomes ration, across the wharf stairs when rumors sprint, and back through lantern alleys where permission has learned to be a language. Tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 3 arrives with your hands still ready. And leave your 7 words below so we can nail the bravest at mouth height where knuckles will meet them before mouths remember how easy it is to be loud and how cheap it is, by comparison, to be correct. The registry arch pretends seals can make mercy permanent, so you rope the arcade from pillar to ledger desk and set the horn lamp on a basket of worn quills until a warm coin of light lands where basin, stamp, rumor, and lungs must agree, or Seville will let ink rehearse victory while POX leases the corners your doorways just taught to behave. The escribano uncorks a new vial and looks at his nib like a conscience. A pair of alguaciles stage posture at opposite ends of the arch as if symmetry were justice. 2 silk factors arrive to ask whether civility can be traded for extra rations if it wears earrings. You answer in the grammar that keeps people alive. Rope squares the space. The clepsydra boy turns his cup with the small authority everyone trusts by now. The sisters of steam shoulder a copper that sighs in the key of work. The board at mouth height offers the same blunt liturgy nobody resents: testigos oídos, ordenanza leída, juramento copiado, padrón asentado, fiebre primero, lavar antes de rumor, lavar antes de moneda, puerta abierta, ventana cerrada, paja al aire, jergón alzado, sin corrillo, tazas mostradas, gracias antes que multas. Fingers brush the plank, shoulders relax. The arch remembers it is a hallway, not a balcony. A notary loves nouns because they never ask to be carried. You place a basin between his Latin and his habit. Lavar antes de rumor persuades his voice to earn the next sentence. Juramento copiado ties his promise to the clepsydra. Padrón asentado converts strangers into lines the ledger can defend without blushing. He signs derramado saldado before multa impuesta and looks surprised to be younger by 3 breaths. An alguacil, who has been practicing a smaller authority since the hospital porch, knocks the plank with a discretion that fits him. Word from the wharf arrives the way water always does. 2 boys with wet sandals and news sprinting ahead of them. A lantern boat sells exceptions, they say, and a priest blesses the price. Rope refuses the deal. You walk grammar to the steps where Mist likes to audition as verdict. Lavar untastes the show from the sail. Testigos oídos seats one boy on the coping stone and gives him a brush. Seats the other beside the canon with the sleeves, who now carries as easily as he blesses. Seats the boatman where buckets can outvote him. The exception dissolves like salt forgot itself. The boat sells bread at cost for 1 hour and learns it feels better than being interesting. Because this arch is also the screen in your hand, pause to do the useful thing that turns attention into rope. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 4 arrives while your wrists still remember the grammar. In the comments, leave your 7-word winter rule you would actually nail at mouth height: fiebre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and tell us which threshold deserves rope next. The sisters will nail the bravest beside the well at Sext. A merchant from the Juderia arrives at the registry with a worry disguised as arithmetic. If we rinse first, he asks, do we lose our place for grain? The escribano hesitates in a tone too familiar to forgive later. Lavar antes de moneda answers before shame grows adjectives. The ration captain, who has learned to write derramado saldado before arancel cobrado, nods and moves a bean on the slate, the smallest miracle a city can do on purpose. The merchant knocks the plank, rinses, and leaves, thinking mathematics may yet be honest if it is taught by bowls. A door chalked Contacto sospechoso under the arcade performs destiny. Laundry gives it another role. Puerta abierta receives help without receipts. Ventana cerrada retires spectators. Paja al aire, jergón alzado, pardon furniture. Cuchillo escaldado, lienzo al aire, fajas enjuagadas insist the hour be a fact instead of a stanza. A child agrees. Gracias antes que multas lists the grandmother first, then the jug runner who skipped 2 errands to keep the minute from spilling, then the notary who learned his hand belongs beneath gratitude, then a silk apprentice who did not wait to be asked. Chalk becomes soap. The balcony that wanted to witness carries instead, and finds out it prefers the wait. Lantern alleys export their accent into the registry, like tide through a gate. Bianca, call her Blanca here, arrives with a plank for timid hands, 2 small circles inside the lintel, saludo y juramento, so people who once bought invisibility can practice permission without witnesses. Puerta abierta meets thirst before sarcasm can rent it. Ventana cerrada refuses to hire lungs for theater. Sin corrillo guards air from admiration. A lamplight adds a notch to the rod where the basin hangs low. Fingerprints, he mutters. Proof, you answer. He smiles like a man who can afford to be corrected, because correction is cheaper than regret. A friar tries to purchase the noon with a banner of pity. Tassas mostradas rents his silk into lids and loaves. He lowers the pole, raises the ladle, and later admits anonymously that usefulness made him braver than slogans ever did. You write "un fraile con mangas" under gracias because sleeves are names now. Winter is a scholar. It argues in corners. You walk grammar to the silk gate again, where courtesy wrestles with ration. The foreman has painted extra circles at child height. Apprentices teach overseers the taps because habit runs downhill faster than privilege. Lavar antes de moneda protects wages from eloquence. Puerta abierta receives a cutter who forgot his dignity at the hospital porch and found it again in the registry. Ventana cerrada refuses to let the aisle buy applause with air. The beam acquires fingerprints like a charter. Nobody complains. The escribano produces a draft to acknowledge public virtue and admonish the careless. Ordenanza leída returns him to last winter's vow and nails the page low where knuckles, not incense, will keep it true. Juramento copiado glues his voice to the clepsydra. Tassas mostradas names the price of any flourish that dares to return. He laughs despite himself and signs where the basin recommends. The registry smells less of lampblack and more of soup. Because rumor is loudest where stone echoes, you keep a sentry at the cistern mouth who only knows 4 lines. Toca 2 veces, lava primero, habla al final, carga ahora. The children adore him, perhaps because he never raises his voice. A girl with flour on her wrists brings him a slate and writes the lines without asking. He stares like a man who has just learned to read. A seller of remedies arrives with jars named Consolacion. Tassas Mostradas buys the labels into lids. Lavar antes de rumor recruits his customers. Testigos oídos parks him at the plank with the baker's wife until he begins to like being thanked. He writes his own name under gracias, lower than hers and higher than the alguacil, and goes home with damp sleeves and a better profession. Because this channel is not a balcony, pause again and lend your elbows to our hour. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 4 arrives before rumor remembers it, sprints faster by lamplight. In the comments, nail your 7 words: fiebre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and tell us which doorway we rope next: the lampright's shed, the wharf stairs, the cabildo kitchen. We will bring rope, lids, bowls, maps, chalk, a clepsydra that never lies, a plank that refuses flattery, and enough receipts to turn thunder into hinges. A tiny riot tries to buy the arch with a trumpet and a pledge to restore the joy of Seville. Tassas Mostradas taxes joy in lids and loaves. Lavar antes de rumor disperses the chorus into errands. Gracias antes que multas names the trumpet lower than the jug runner and higher than the boy who kept time. He blushes into usefulness. Joy survives. Applause takes the night off. You close the registry the way you close every successful hour, with the drill that offends nobody and helps everyone. Cestas abajo, cuerda suelta, banco devuelto, tabla in alto. The clepsydra empties like a promise that learned modesty. The sisters push copper toward the next threshold that still confuses applause for policy. The notary replaces his nib and touches the plank like a man who remembers how cheaply he just bought his own integrity. The arch breathes as if it plans to deserve spring. Rope stays at mouth height, where knuckles can remember. The basin stays low, where fingerprints bless without permission. The hour remains owned by the smallest reliable instrument in the quarter, sand falling as steadily as a prayer that never begged. POX, deprived of corners another night, looks for alleys without boards. You intend to follow with a hammer in your pocket and patience in reserve. Say, continue, and we will walk this grammar through the lampright's shed when economies tempt shortcuts, along the wharf when rumors sprint, under the arch of the cabildo when clerks attempt to legislate applause, and back into lantern alleys where permission has become a language. Tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 4 arrives while your hands are still ready. And leave your 7 words below so we can nail the bravest where knuckles will meet them before mouths remember how cheap loudness is compared to being correct. The lampright's shed. pretends lanterns can replace minutes. So you rope the lintel from hinge to jamb and set the horn lamp on a crate of whale oil until a warm coin of light lands where glass, basin, rumor, and lungs must agree, or Seville will let shine masquerade as schedule, while POX rents the corners your doorways just taught to behave. The lamplight holds a polished chimney to the window and calls it charity. His apprentice, soot to the elbow, wants instructions that fit in his pocket. 2 alguaciles arrive with bats that love echo. A cannon arrives with a whisper that thinks it's a law. You answer with verbs. Rope squares the threshold. The clepsydra boy tilts his bronze cup. The sisters of steam shoulder copper across the sill, and the first hiss translates brightness into discipline. The plank at mouth height repeats the blunt liturgy nobody resents anymore. Testigos oídos, ordenanza leída, juramento copiado, padrón asentado, fiebre primero, lavar antes de rumor, lavar antes de moneda, puerta abierta, ventana cerrada, paja al aire, jergón alzado, sin corrillo, tazas mostradas, gracias antes que multas. Knuckles brush wood. Lanterns wait their turn like citizens. The lamplight offers a special glass that, he swears, keeps bad air from learning the way in. Lavar antes des rumor persuades his boast to sit down. Tosses Mostratus buys his claim into lids for patios with none. He sulks into usefulness and then, startled, enjoys it. You show the apprentice 2 small circles painted inside the lintel, saludo y juramento, so shy hands can rehearse the taps without witnesses. He knocks twice, rinses, and laughs, which is why instruction must be nailed low, to give courage somewhere practical to land. Puerta abierta receives thirst early, so shame cannot rent it. Ventana cerrada evicts spectators who never pay their share of air. The shed forgets to be impressive. It becomes a hallway for light, not a theater about it. Because this doorway is also the screen in your hand, do the thing that keeps our craft from becoming a story someone else owns tomorrow. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so Part 5 lands while your wrists still remember the grammar. In the comments, drop your 7-word winter rule you would actually hammer at mouth height. Fiebre primero. Ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and tell us which threshold deserves rope next. The sisters will nail the bravest beside the well by sext. The wharf stairs answer with their usual temptation, an exemption in a bucket. A broker from the river holds up a stamped jar, blessed smoke for lantern glass, and offers immunity that smells expensive. Testigos oídos sits him beside 2 culvert lads, the canon with the sleeves, and a washer whose ledger of stains will outlive the broker's paperwork. Lavar antes de rumor takes the perfume out of his claim. Tazas mostradas converts promises into lids and loaves. He knocks twice, discovers decency fits him, and asks whether usefulness has hours. Yes, you say, all of them. The Cabildo's kitchen wants maps again. Hunger wants soup. Pan antes de cuentos moves the pointer off the parchment and into the ladle. Novices write names under gracias, as if wages were a psalm. The almoner reads them with the voice paymasters save for harvest. Juramento copiado ties the route to the clepsydra. Ordenanza leída keeps eloquence from borrowing tomorrow's breath. A boy who thought holiness was the sound candles make when they pretend to be policies dries basins and finds faith lighter when it is stronger. A door chalked contacto sospechoso in the lampright's alley auditions disaster. Laundry refuses the role. Puerta abierta invites help. Ventana cerrada removes witnesses. Paja al aire, jergón alzado persuade furniture to stop prosecuting. Cuchillo escaldado, lienzo al aire, fajas enjuagadas make courage measurable. The child arrives unimpressed with rhetoric. Gracias antes que multas prints the lampright's apprentice above the alguacil and below the grandmother. The order fixes 3 futures at once and insults nobody who carried. Chalk retires to soap. You keep the hammer where it belongs. Visible. Night has a habit of renting balconies to trumpets. One climbs the lampright's steps with a pledge to restore joy. Tassus Mostratus charges joy in lids and bricks. Lavar antes de rumor breaks the chorus into errands. The trumpet knocks twice, discovers applause that feeds someone, tastes better than applause that quotes him, and volunteers for timing duty at the cistern. You shake his hand once, the sisters clap once. Nobody spends what they cannot earn. Because winter cross-examines furniture, the rope pulls you to a loft that still thinks corners are destiny. Ventana cerrada persuades air to mind itself. Puerta abierta lets carriers in without receipts. Paja al aire corrects yesterday's damp. Jergón alzado forgives the floor. Fiebre primero rejects a rumor with a cup that never studied theology. The father asks if bread is still promise or already parable. Bread after rinses, you say. He nods and teaches the youngest the 2 taps. She salutes your plank as if she just joined a guild. Lantern alleys export their accent across the shed and back into the registry. Blanca hangs a new board. Toca 2 veces. Lava primero. Habla al final. Carga ahora. The escribano copies the line in a margin he didn't know he respected until today. Padrón asentado turns carriers into arguments the ledger can win. The alguacil washes without asking who is watching, because lungs no longer care to flatter him. The clepsydra boy flips the cup and the district inhales, not in unison, but on time. The wharf, jealous of the piazza's improvements, tries a relapse disguised as patriotism. A boat owner offers night lights for morale. Rope occupies the seam between shine and schedule. Lavar antes de moneda teaches generosity to arrive before accounting. Testigos oídos gives 2 fishermen and a novice priest the bench. They choose deliveries over display and discover their stories improve immediately. The river approves by being ordinary, which is how rivers repent. Because this channel is not a balcony, pause again and lend your wrists the way you did yesterday. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 5 arrives before rumor remembers how to sprint beneath lanterns. In the comments, nail your 7 words: fiebre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and name the next door: the cabildo's porch, the silk gate at dusk, the stair by the river. We will bring rope, lids, bowls, maps, chalk, a clepsydra that never lies, a plank that refuses flattery, and enough receipts to turn thunder into hinges. The canon returns with a scroll that asks to acknowledge public virtue and admonish the careless. Ordinanza laida ties his compliments to the basin and the clock. Tassas mostradas taxes the admonitions in loaves. The admonitions become recipes. The recipes become routes. He laughs in relief at how small a miracle had to be. The saint painted over the door looks younger for having been believed correctly. A seller of remedies reappears with jars renamed Esperanza. Tassas Mostradas buys labels into lids and keeps the man to carry. Lavar antes de rumor turns his customers into our queue. He writes his name under gracias, lower than the girl with flour on her wrists, and higher than the alguacil because he earned that precise position. People learn from the column as from scripture. The order is the teachin'. The rope stays at mouth height, where knuckles remember. The basin stays low, where fingerprints bless without permission. The hour remains owned by the smallest reliable instrument in the district, sand falling exactly as fast as breath can afford. POX, deprived of corners another night, goes looking for alleys without boards. You intend to follow, hammer in pocket, patience in reserve, elbows ready to embarrass thunder back into hinges. You end the shed exactly as you ended the piazza, and the registry, and the porch, because repetition is the cheapest miracle winter allows. Cestas abajo, cuerda suelta, banco devuelto, tabla en alto. Baskets down, rope unknotted, bench set back, board left up. The lamplight wipes glass with new affection. The apprentice discovers pride feels better after rinses. The alguacil practices the 2 taps without needing witnesses. The clepsydra empties in a voice older than envy, and the city breathes as if it plans to deserve spring. Say, continue, and we will carry this grammar down to the wharf stairs when rumors sprint, through the cabildo kitchen when maps want ladles, under the silk gate when courtesy rations itself, and back through lantern alleys where permission became a language your neighbors can borrow. Tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one. So the next hour arrives with your hands already brave. And leave your 7 words below so we can nail the bravest where knuckles will meet them before mouths remember how cheap it is to be loud. The wharf stares, pretend tide can pardon vows, so you rope the wet stone from bollard to bollard and set the horn lamp on a tarred fender until a warm coin of light lands where bucket, ledger, rumor, and lungs must agree or Seville will let the river rewrite hunger as spectacle, while POX hires corners by the hour. A broker points at the stamp on his jar as if wax could disinfect minutes. 2 sailors sing down the risers about a saint who blesses throats for a coin. A lantern skiff idles at the lowest step, hawking nightlight for morale, which is how shortcuts try to impersonate compassion when the city is tired. You answer with verbs. Rope squares the stair. The clepsydra boy turns his cup so the water understands who keeps tempo. The sisters of steam shoulder copper over the last slick tread, and the first hiss translates shine into schedule. The board nailed at mouth height refuses poetry. Testigos oídos, ordenanza leída, juramento copiado, padrón asentado, fiebre primero, lavar antes de rumor, lavar antes de moneda, puerta abierta, ventana cerrada, paja al aire, jergón alzado, sin corrillo, tazas mostradas, gracias antes que multas. Knuckles brush wood, lanterns wait their turn like citizens. Because this stare is also the screen in your hand, do the practical thing that keeps minutes public. Subscribe and tap the bell. The practical one, not the theatrical one. So part 6 reaches you while your wrists still remember this grammar. In the comments, leave your 7-word winter rule you would actually hammer at mouth height. Fiebre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and tell us which doorway deserves rope next. The sisters will nail the bravest beside the well by sext. The broker tries to sell wax against breath. Lavar antes de rumor persuades his boast to sit beside the basin until it learns to be useful. Tazas mostradas buys the seal into lids for patios with none. He sulks into carrying, then discovers decency is lighter than merchandise. The sailors offer a ballad as credential. Lavar antes de moneda lets them sing after ladles and teaches the refrain, 2 taps, saludo y juramento, so the chorus keeps time with cups. The lantern skiff proposes light instead of rules. The rope replies that light is the lipstick of shortcuts and invites the owner to glow from a ladle instead. He grins in spite of his margins and does so. Ration carts bump the quay at odd angles when patience is low. A caballero practicing a smaller authority wants duty before rinses. Lavar antes de moneda protects his ledger the way a life jacket protects pride. Padrón asentado turns a tense crowd into lines the registry can defend without blushing. A jurado climbs the steps with a parchment eager to be adored and a speech about respectable lanes. Ordenanza leída returns him to last winter's vow. Rinses outrank rhetoric. Gratitude precedes penalties. Sand owns the hour and pins it low where fingerprints, not incense, must keep it honest. He knocks and looks relieved. Relief is the face power makes when it allows itself to be shepherded by chores. A shutter up the bank chalked "Contacto sospechoso," auditions calamity. Laundry refuses the role. Puerta abierta receives help early, so shame starves. Ventana cerrada evicts spectators before they begin to choreograph grief. Paja al aire, jergón alzado apologize for furniture and persuade gravity to be kind. Cuchillo escaldado, lienzo al aire, fajas enjuagadas force the hour to choose fact over myth. The child arrives uninterested in adjectives. Gracias antes que multas lists the grandmother first, then the jug runner who missed a prayer to keep a minute steady, then the sailor who fetched wood because rhythm persuaded him, then the canon whose sleeves remembered. Chalk dissolves into soap. That's the only absolution winter respects. The cabildo's kitchen appears with a pointer and a map that thinks corners are liturgy. Pan antes de cuentos turns the pointer into ladles. Novices read gracias like wages. The almoner discovers he prefers this tone because it leaves more people able to meet his eyes next week. The kitchen adopts your lost-minute plank, toca dos veces, lava primero, habla al final, carga ahora, and the lineup's impatience lowers to the key kettles can keep. Hunger, deprived of audience, chooses partnership instead. Because lantern alleys export better than sermons, Blanca brings her common sense board. The lamplight hangs 2 circles inside his lintel so shy hands can practice taps without witnesses. A girl with flour on her wrists hums a street hymn no one wrote. 2 taps, 2 words, 1 breath. The clepsydra boy hears her and adjusts his cup as if apprenticed to an orchestra he didn't expect to love. The alguacil, watching, rehearses not being important and discovers it helps. Night tries to sell courage by the bottle. A remedy peddler sets up at the landing with jars renamed Esperanza. Tazas mostradas buys labels into lids. Lavar antes de rumor baptizes his cue. Testigos oídos parks him beneath the board between the baker's wife and the jug runner until he learns to prefer thanks to testimony. He signs gracias lower than the girl with flour and higher than the alguacil because the city is learning to spell dignity in accurate positions. He leaves damp and employable, which is what poetry looks like when famine edits. Because rumor sprints best downhill, the river stares cough a claim that POX rides mist faster after curfew. Rope disassembles its skates. Lavar antes de rumor changes speed into chores. Testigos oídos seats two culvert lads with brushes like arguments. The canon with the sleeves measures buckets like a psalm. Gracias antes que multas prints their names big enough for pigeons to pretend they can read. The rumor departs tired and returns as a timetable. That is policy's favorite voice. A procession of pity attempts to rent the key. Trumpet, banner, a promise to restore joy. Tasas mostradas charges joy in loaves and bricks. Lavar antes de rumor redistributes the chorus across the stair. Sin Corrillo refuses to hire lungs to carry admiration. The trumpet knocks twice and discovers applause that feeds someone tastes better than applause that quotes him. He volunteers to time at the cistern. You shake his hand once, the sisters clap once, nobody spends what cannot be earned. Because this channel is not a balcony, pause and make our discipline portable. Subscribe and tap the bell, not the theatrical one, so Part 6 doesn't arrive to a street that forgot its rope. In the comments, nail your 7 words: fiebre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and name the next threshold for grammar: registry arch, silk gate at dusk, the bishop's porch. We will bring rope, lids, bowls, maps, chalk, a clepsydra that never lies, a plank that refuses flattery, and enough receipts to turn thunder into hinges. The silk gate arrives with a favor and a secret. The foreman wants lantern glass for morale and more grain for patience. Lavar antes de moneda answers the first with cups. Ordenanza leída answers the second by pinning the ration to the clock instead of to virtue. He paints 2 more circles at child height and tells overseers to learn by imitation. The workshop breathes easier without growing proud. Pride will tempt them again. You planned a board for spring. A steward from San Lazaro comes with a request honest enough to deserve yes. Can we read gracias in the ward where people forget why it exists? You send the pot seller turned porter with the list and the voice he earned yesterday. He reads names like pay. Patients nod like employers who survived. The ward gets quiet in the right way. A final ambush tries to smuggle itself under your rope disguised as elegance. A letter with a purple seal proposing night indulgences for reputable lanes. Ordenanza leída returns the seal to last winter's vow. Testigos oídos seats Blanca, the clepsydra boy, the culvert lads, and the grandmother from the chalked door. The indulgence becomes a schedule of deliveries. The letter becomes a napkin. The alguacil signs with a face that says he likes himself better this way. You let him. You close the stair the way you close every hour that wants to be remembered honestly. Cestas abajo, cuerda suelta, banco devuelto, tabla en alto. Baskets down, rope unknotted, bench set back, board left up. The river sighs as if winter taught it grammar. The lamplight wipes glass without explaining it. The canon forgets to sermonize because drying bowls is work. The clepsydra empties in a voice even rumor likes to listen to. POX looks for corners and finds boards instead. You keep the hammer where the lamp can see it. The basin stays low, where fingerprints bless without permission. The rope stays at mouth height, where knuckles can decide before mouths volunteer thunder. The ledger keeps space for names where winter will pretend it invented gratitude. The street keeps time with a boy's cup and a girl's hum. And you, who refused to let the river smuggle exceptions under light, take a breath you can afford and aim the hour at the next doorway. Say, continue, and we'll carry this grammar through the cabildo porch when maps want ladles, along the silk gate when courtesy rations itself, under the registry arch when clerks attempt to legislate applause, and back through lantern alleys where permission remains a language. Tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so the next hour lands while your wrists are ready. And leave your 7 words the low, so we can nail the bravest where knuckles will meet them before mouths remember how easy it is to be loud and how durable it is, by comparison, to be correct. The cabildo porch pretends maps can pour soup, so you rope the colonnade from pillar to pillar and set the horn lamp on the marble plinth until a warm coin of light lands where ladle, ledger, rumor, and lungs must agree. Or Seville will let winter's choreography spend the last of its courage, while POX rents the corners your doorways just taught to behave. A clerk unfolds a parchment like weather. A regidor clears his throat as if vowels were fuel. 2 confraternity wardens arrive with a banner that wants to be a schedule. You answer with verbs. Rope squares the porch. The clepsydra boy turns his cup with the calm of a clock that trusts your knuckles. The sisters of steam swing copper onto trestles. The first hiss translates lines into routes. The board at mouth height refuses decoration. Testigos oídos, ordenanza leída, juramento copiado, padrón asentado, fiebre primero, lavar antes de rumor, lavar antes de moneda, puerta abierta, ventana cerrada, paja al aire, jergón alzado, sin corrillo, tazas mostradas, gracias antes que multas. The plank says presente, and the map, to its surprise, begins to enjoy being useful. Because this porch is also the screen in your hand, do the practical thing that keeps minutes public. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so Part 7 lands while your wrists still remember the grammar. In the comments, leave your 7-word winter rule you would actually hammer at mouth height. Fiebre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and tell us which threshold deserves rope next. the sisters will nail the bravest beside the well bisexed. The regidor announces a Thanksgiving march that will console the afflicted and admonish the careless. Tosses Mostratus prices each corner in lids and loaves. He blinks, counts, loses interest in admonition, discovers he prefers logistics, and orders pails to the barrios that do not vote. The banner sulks into errands. Lavar antes de rumor lowers the choir to the key kettles can keep. The canonical list of streets turns into a queue of doors. The map folds into voices that know how to say thank you without a salute. Silk arrives with polite trouble at dusk. The foreman wants lantern glass for morale and extra grain for patience. Lavar anses the first with cups and the second with the sentence the clepsydra loves after rinses. He paints 2 circles lower than yesterday and tells overseers to learn by imitation. Puerta abierta receives a cutter who mistook embarrassment for piety. Ventana cerrada persuades spectators to spend their air elsewhere. Sin corrillo keeps wages from purchasing choruses. The workshop breathes not bravely, simply, which is the only brave the city can afford this week. The registry arch coughs a relapse wearing purple. An escribano offers night indulgences for reputable lanes. The seal preens for applause. Ordinanza laida returns him to last winter's vow, rinses out rhetoric. Gratitude precedes penalties. Sand owns the hour and nails it low where fingerprints, not incense, keep it decent. Testigos oídos seats Blanca with her common sense board, the clepsydra boy, 2 culvert lads, and the grandmother whose chalk dissolved into soap. The indulgence retires into deliveries. The seal becomes a napkin. He signs derramado saldado before multa impuesta without flinching, and leaves as proud as a man can be when he learns usefulness faster than vanity. The wharf stares higher moonlight to sell exceptions. The lantern skiff reappears with a new slogan, light instead of rules. Rope occupies the seam between shine and schedule. Lavar antes de rumor removes the glitter from the bargain. Tasas mostradas buys the invention into lids. Padrón asentado keeps the deckhands honest enough to laugh at themselves. The boatman, having discovered decency is a better advertisement than illumination, volunteers to time at the cistern. The river, relieved, behaves like ordinary grammar again. A door chalked Contacto Sospechoso, 2 streets west of the Cabildo, throws your patience a play it refuses to cast. Puerta abierta invites help early, so shame starves. Ventana cerrada evicts a balcony before it becomes a judge. Paja al aire, jergón alzado make furniture polite. Cuchillo escaldado, lienzo al aire, fajas enjuagadas force the hour into being a fact. The child arrives uninterested in plot. Gracias antes que multas lists the lampright's apprentice higher than the alguacil, because order educates better than praise. The alguacil knocks the plank like a man who intends to learn where to be admired next time. Chalk dissolves. That is politics done correctly. Markets sprout absolutions whenever soup queues grow polite. A remedy seller returns with jars renamed Consuelo de Enero. Tasas Mostradas buys labels into lids and leaves the man to carry. Lavar antes de rumor baptizes his customers into the root. He copies his name under gracias, lower than the girl with flower on her wrists, higher than the trumpet that learned timing. The ordering is not a performance. It is a curriculum the city refuses to move to accommodate vanity. The Cabildo kitchen discovers its map likes being read by people who actually eat. The almoner calls gracias in the tone paymasters save for harvest. A novice deacon dries basins as if he had waited his whole novitiate to discover the best sacrament is the one that leaves fingerprints. A canon with sleeves remembers silence is not a sin. He uses it on purpose. Lantern alleys export their accent back onto the porch because liturgies improve when they are stolen. Blanca nails a second plank at child height. Toca dos veces. Lava primero. Habla al final. Carga ahora. The clepsydra boy teaches two jug runners to keep time with knuckles when the cup is busy. They carry the beat to their block and paint two circles on a post. Rope pretends not to see the imitation. Ropes are proudest when forgotten. A shutter slams across from the scales, and a slur tries to join the line wearing piety. Testigos oídos requires the mouth to carry. It does not. Lavar antes de rumor empties its echo. Sin corrillo refuses to hire lungs. The girl with flower writes the names of the people who carried on the board and draws two circles beside them because she now understands which part explains the rest. She has never been prouder nor less interested in applause. The bishop's porch wants to stage Thanksgiving with processions. The sisters want to time gratitude with soup. Tasas Mostradas moves stanzas into loaves. Lavar antes de rumor breaks choruses into errands. Gracias antes que multas reads without pronouns, so nobody steals the hour. The bishop, who has become braver since sleeves were invented for him, signs the margin the way a man signs a stable piece. The lampright's shed discovers it can love fingerprints. He hangs the basin low and stops crying when he sees smudges. He calls them miracles by Monday. His apprentice writes saludo y juramento under the lintel in a hand that forgives nobody and therefore loves everyone. A lantern that once sold privacy now sells permission, and neither the lamp nor the alley misses secrecy. Because this channel is not a balcony, pause and make the call action-shaped. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one. So part 7 lands while your hands still remember how to keep people alive. In the comments, give your 7 words. Fibre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and point us to the final doorway for this build. We will bring rope, lids, bowls, maps, chalk, a clepsydra that never lies, a plank that refuses flattery, and receipts sturdy enough to embarrass thunder back into hinges. Night tries one last bargain. Joy tax-free if you buy it now. A trumpet climbs the steps with a pledge to restore Sevilla to itself. Tasas Mostradas charges joy in lids and bricks. Lavar antes de rumor redistributes melody into errands. Sin corrillo keeps admiration from renting lungs. The trumpet knocks twice and learns applause that feeds someone lasts longer than applause that quotes him. The map smiles by folding itself. You shake his hand once. The sisters clap once. Nobody spends what cannot be earned. Because winter cross-examines furniture until spring arrives with amnesty, the rope pulls you to a loft that still believes corners are destiny. Ventana cerrada persuades air to mind itself. Puerta abierta lets carriers in without receipts. Paja al aire repairs yesterday. Jergon alzado forgives the floor for being a witness. Fiebre primero refuses to let rumor become biography. The father asks if bread is still promise. Bread after rinses, you say. He nods and teaches the smallest to knock the beam. She taps twice with the kind of seriousness that makes city building feel like play. The clepsydra boy grows taller by having no idea how important he is. He turns the cup and the quarter steals an honest breath. He drains the cup and the plaza remembers. History is just minutes recorded honestly. The sisters stack bowls into arguments no sermon can outtalk. Blanca reads gracias with the voice a paymaster uses for wages. The map approves by staying folded. The river approves by being boring. Boredom, in winter, is wealth. A final paper tries to reintroduce exceptions with adjectives. The escribano delivers it gently, as a man returns a habit he is embarrassed to have found. Ordenanza leída anchors the page to the plank. Juramento copiado ties his mouth to the minute. He signs where the basin points. He lingers with the look of a person who wants to be right cheaply forever and recognizes how little is required. A board at mouth height, a cup of sand, a bowl low enough for fingerprints, names read aloud before fines, a rope that refuses to clap. You close the porch with the drill that never disappoints saints or budgets. Cestas abajo, cuerda suelta, banco devuelto, tabla en alto. Baskets down, rope unknotted, bench set back, board left up. The map sleeps under the lamp like a well-behaved rumor. The banner forgets to be a noun and becomes a rag. The regidor tests his new humility by holding the ladle without announcing it. The city breathes like a person who has learned the difference between applause and air. The basin stays low, where fingerprints bless without permission. The rope stays at mouth height, where knuckles decide before mouths recruit thunder. The ledger keeps space for names, where spring will pretend it invented gratitude. The street keeps time with a child's taps and a boy's cup. POX, deprived of corners another night, goes looking for alleys without boards. You intend to follow, hammer in pocket, patience in reserve, elbows ready to turn thunder back into hinges one more hour. Say, continue, and we will finish the build with the last stretch, stitching all these small rules into a habit spring cannot spend, reading gracias at sext like wages, leaving the basin low enough for children to police adults, setting the rope where knuckles will find it before mouths rehearse, and pinning your 7 words beside the well so next winter starts cheaper than this one. Tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so part 7 arrives with your hands already brave. The well court pretends stone can memorize gratitude, so you rope the rim from post to post and set the horn lamp on the curb until a warm coin of light lands where basin, clepsydra, rumor, and lungs must agree, or Seville will let spring spend the winter's grammar like applause, while POX buys porners with leftover breath. Blanca arrives with her common sense board tucked beneath her arm like a book she's tired of lending. The clepsydra boy turns his cup with the calm that makes pigeons blink. The lamplight wipes a chimney until he can see his face and looks relieved that it doesn't matter. 2 alguaciles arrive without swagger. They wash before remembering why they came. You do not wait for speeches. Rope squares the stones. The sisters of steam swing copper onto a trestle as if they never learned how to do anything the loud way. The plank at mouth height repeats the short liturgy everyone trusts. Testigos oídos, ordenanza leída, juramento copiado, padrón asentado, fiebre primero, lavar antes de rumor, lavar antes de moneda, puerta abierta, ventana cerrada, paja al aire, jergón alzado, sin corrillo, tazas mostradas, gracias antes que multas. Because this well is also the rectangle in your hand, do the small thing that keeps the habit public. Subscribe and tap the bell, the practical one, not the theatrical one, so our builds keep landing while your wrists remember the grammar. In the comments, leave your 7-word winter rule you would actually hammer at mouth height. Fiebre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and tell us which threshold you want roped next. The sisters will nail the bravest beside the curb at sext. A regidor balances a rolled map in his palm as if it were a pardon. He proposes a last Thanksgiving parade to remind the city who kept it. Tassus, most crimes, prices every corner in lids and loaves. Lavar antes de remor lowers the choir to the key kettles can keep. The parade dissolves into deliveries. Gratitude is saved from spectacle by being made useful. He stares at the ledger reading Gracias antes que multas in the tone of paymasters and realizes he prefers himself in that register. He signs derramado saldado before multa impuesta, and the lampright's apprentice, who used to think dignity was a candle shadow, knocks the plank with hands that already know what memory costs and what it cannot afford. The wharf stairs attempt one last arrangement with moonlight. Lanterns instead of rules. The boatman, now proud of his timing, laughs and says, "Lanterns are what you have when you forget the taps." Testigos oídos seats the two culvert boys, who keep finding smaller floods to defeat. Lavar antes de rumor withdraws glamour from the bargain. Padrón asentado puts the deckhands on a list the registry can defend. The river, flattered by normalcy, behaves like punctuation instead of plot. A trumpet on the bank practices a small hymn that fits between ladles. The sisters allow it because it keeps time. A door chalked contacto sospechoso 2 streets from the well rehearses despair. Laundry retires the roll. Puerta abierta invites help without buying humility from anyone. Ventana cerrada evicts spectators. Paja al aire, jergón alzado, forgive furniture. Cuchillo escaldado, lienzo al aire. Fajas enjuagadas insist the hour turn factual before it becomes myth. The child arrives with no interest in metaphors. Gracias antes que multas lists the grandmother first, then the jug runner who missed a psalm to keep a minute steady, then the lampright's apprentice, then the alguacil who knocked after he carried. Chalk dissolves into soap. Somewhere a woodcut is revised from halo to basin. Nobody complains. Because power forgets where it learned, the registry sends a parchment with better manners than ambition. Witness heard before penalty. Spill paid before fine assessed. Read gracias at sext. The escribano knocks the plank as if to confirm that knuckles are still cheaper than adjectives. He copies toca 2 veces, lava primero, habla al final, carga ahora onto the back of his schedule because he intends to inherit less apology next year. You believe him. The basin approves by gathering fingerprints without requiring ceremony. Lantern alleys export their accent up the cathedral steps and down the market arcades until the city's vowels feel familiar to its hands. Blanca nails her second board, child height, so the smallest are licensed to police adults gently. A silk overseer pretends he invented this week's courtesy. Apprentices let him keep the story because buckets like allies who brag only after carrying. A friar whose sleeves learned honesty asks whether faith has anything left to add. Dry the bowls, you say. He smiles in the key that matches kettles. Winter tries to spend one more rumor inside a charity booth. a jar labeled Consuelo de Invierno that claims to teach throats what courage forgot. Taças Mostradas buys label into lids. Lavar antes de rumor baptizes customers into the queue. Testigos oídos seats the seller on the bench until he repeats his new name, Porter, without embarrassment. He signs under gracias lower than the girl with flour on her wrists and higher than the trumpet that learned timing. It is a good order because it teaches 3 things at once and flatters nobody who didn't sweat. A notary brings the last exception in a pouch that smells of wax and regret. Night indulgences for reputable lanes, he murmurs, as if hoping the sentence will correct itself on the way out of his mouth. Ordenanza leída returns him to last winter's vow. Testigos oídos seats Blanca, the clepsydra boy, the culvert lads, the grandmother whose chalk became soap. The indulgence becomes a schedule of deliveries while he is still speaking. He signs derramado saldado with a solemnity that suits him better than eloquence. He leaves pleased with himself and, happily, correct. Because thresholds are the only places policy remains honest, you walk grammar through a tour that needs no escort. Shed, well, porch, registry, wharf, gate, just to see if any hinge forgot. None have. The basin stays low where fingerprints bless without permission. The plank stays at mouth height where knuckles decide before mouths recruit thunder. The rope refuses to clap. The clepsydra never lies. Gracias reads like wages. Children police adults with taps, not with scorn. The city breathes like a person who learned to prefer neighbors to anecdotes. Someone asks what survived the season that wasn't here before. You point, without speech, to the board nailed low enough to bruise, to the ladle that turned maps into routes, to the order of sentences, gracias antes que multas, that taught pride to be useful, to fingerprints dried on a basin iconographers now paint with halos reluctantly, to apprentices who learned the taps before they learned to quote. The POX, deprived of corners for so long it became superstitious, went looking for alleys without boards, and discovered the city had learned to enjoy being uninteresting after dusk. Boredom, in winter, is a fortune. Because this channel is the other alley we hold together, and where the hour began, in small, practical vows. Cestas abajo, cuerda suelta, banco devuelto, tabla en alto, baskets down, rope unknotted, bench set back, board left up. The clepsydra empties like a promise that didn't need witnesses. The sisters push copper toward whichever doorway still thinks applause is policy. The lamplight locks his shed without worrying about who he used to be. The regidor passes with his map neatly folded and no parade hidden inside. The river-minders whistle the 2 taps when they are alone because they like the rhythm. That is what culture sounds like when it finally belongs to people. You promised a story you could live inside, not sleep through. So carry this grammar past the end screen. Nail a board where mouths rehearse. Set the basin low enough for children to enforce. Keep the rope at mouth height where knuckles choose before sentences volunteer thunder. Say names in the order Winter taught you to prefer, and practice the 4 short lines until they feel like unremarkable decency. Toca 2 veces, lava primero, habla al final, carga ahora. Cities that inherit those 4 lines start cheaper than ours and spend slower. If this build earned your elbows, subscribe and tap the bell. The practical one, not the theatrical one, so the next 7-part adventure lands with your hands ready. In the comments, nail the 7 words you would hang at mouth height in your own street. Fiebre primero, ventana cerrada, pan antes de cuentos, and drop the new theme title you want hammered into minutes. We'll bring rope, lids, bowls, maps, chalk, a clepsydra that never lies, a plank that refuses flattery, and 1,000 receipts. You bring wrists. Tell us which door to teach. We will meet you there with the lamp lit and the basin low, until thunder remembers it works best as a hinge.